I want you to imagine the scene. It's the lobby of a theater after a concert. The audience is mostly teenage girls, some not even quite that old. There's a blast. There's flesh and blood on view on the floors. There's screams, there's running, there's escaping, tears, panic, and all the rest. That was the scene in Manchester, England on Monday night in the latest ISIS attack. And as Roger Simon, my old boss, wrote for PJ Media this morning, this time they came after our children. Bill, I don't know a blunter way to say this. Is this the wake-up call for the West?
Apparently not. They came for our children in Russia, what was it, 7, 8 years ago? Was it Beslan, where they murdered 230 school children?
Yeah.
This is the issue, right? What is it going to take? What's it going to take? I was talking about this a little earlier today. It seems to me that logically speaking, we have three choices to stop these. We have three choices, period. Choice number one is that we become Muslims and that'll stop the terror attack. That's choice number one. Choice number two is that we get serious about not only fighting ISIS overseas, but get serious about the fact that they get a lot of support from the communities that they live in, and that there are huge numbers of people who are not refugees. They're not grandmothers and children. They're warriors that are sent here to colonize both Europe and America. You can get serious about that. Or third, you can just simply let them continue. I don't know that there's another option than that. So the question is, which one are we going to take? Most people would say they're not willing to become Muslims. Okay. Most people would also say, unfortunately, that they're not willing to do what they need to do to address this ideology, which is speak plainly about it. So it sounds to me, Steve, like that this is just what business as usual is going to be. This is going to be the news. 200 people here today, 1,000 here tomorrow, 12 on one day, 17 on the next. Then a big one, maybe 700 people. That was a really terrible one. Boy, that was bad compared to the other ones. And then another one, and then another one, and so on and so on and so on. And this is what it's going to take until somebody gets serious. Now, Donald Trump had Secretary of Defense Mattis make a statement, which I thought was profoundly good. He says, we are no longer going to be in a war of attrition with ISIS. The United States of America should never be in a war of attrition with anybody again, ever, ever. But he said, no, we are now going to actively seek and find them and destroy them. I thought, okay, that'll help with the overseas problem. But these are not al-Qaeda jihadis who snuck into the country in order to do a mission. These are people who are living in the country, mostly in Europe, but a couple cases here in the United States, who are drawn to this ideology, identify themselves with ISIS. ISIS is like a magnet. It's not a control center. It's an ideological magnet for the lunatics and the failures out there to say to themselves, well, I don't really have much to live for, so I'm going to take a bunch of people with me. I'm going to attach myself to ISIS, and I get to go to heaven and all the rest of this nonsense. Just finally, if we're serious about doing this, we can start doing things like, putting pig's blood on the bullets that we fire, because these people are motivated by a belief that they are going to heaven. And as it turns out, their religion has a little loophole, which says that no products from swine can ever enter heaven, period. And so you would psychologically deprive them of their motivation. It happened back in 1901, 1902 with Moros in Philippines. It stopped.
Yeah.
Stopped like that. It stopped the next day. So when we're more worried about saving our kids' lives than hurting people's feelings, then maybe we'll see some change.
Bill, let me give you a quick follow-up. And I don't want to get partisan political, not the next day. But President Trump said something that's been getting a lot of reaction, both positive and negative, when he referred to the terrorists as losers. What did you think of the use of that word?
He's exactly right. And I remember a lot of people had a conniption fit when he referred to James Comey as a nut job. Well, it's starting to look like James Comey is a nut job. I don't believe that I had any influence on the election. I'd be mortified if I found out that I did. This is kind of a nut job thing to say. Yeah. So they are losers. And the left hates it because they seem to think that this would be hurting their feelings. And if we hurt their feelings, they might do something terrible. But ultimately, Steve, these are losers. They're losers. And by the way, not to put too fine a point on it, so are the domestic people that do mass shootings. They're losers too. They're people who probably would have committed suicide, but now they get to commit suicide and become famous, right? Their pictures all over the news. And with the movies like The Matrix and the fact that you become a worldwide figure of discussion, it's a miracle that we don't see 3 of these a day.
I got to collect myself for a moment here. Scott, dad to dad on this one. I went to bed last night kind of early and without looking at the news, and your kids are older and you have a little more experience on this. What do I say to my kids tonight when I tuck them in?
I was sitting at the dinner table when my little watch thing popped up with a headline that this had happened, and I knew as soon as I saw that it was in an Ariana Grande concert that that's the target demographic would be mostly young girls. And I'm sitting there at a table with 2 female friends of my kids and my daughter, and everybody is laughing and having a good time, and I am just in a funk. And it was finally I didn't want to ruin their
Sure.
dinner, but at the end I finally said something about it, and then just sort of a pall was cast over the proceedings there. I don't know what you tell your kids. I mean, I think you hug your kids, you love your kids, you realize you can never fully protect them, which you knew already. But you have to realize that we live in a world where these kinds of people are allowed to roam free. These, and I will refer to them again as literal Islamists, those who take the Quran at face value. And I think what happens in their communities is that a lot of nice folks who are raised in the Muslim religion, who don't really even understand it, but just go because that's the thing to do. It's kind of like growing up Roman Catholic for a lot of folks. You just do it, and your parents did it, and your grandparents did it. A lot of those folks think that if they speak out, if they, draw attention to the evil in their midst, that it will somehow paint them with a broad brush, and that everybody will look at Islam and say, well, what a horrible religion it is. Well, it looks like a horrible religion right now, okay? So you already got that going for you. So unless you do something to reverse that trend, unless you do something to call out the wickedness in your midst, unless you do something to make sure that your local imam is not preaching this kind of hatred, unless you do something to make sure that the guy next door who seems like such a nice guy, but nobody really knows him, and he's seen coming and going at all hours of the days and night, and people are coming to visit him and bringing stuff into the house, you need to pay attention to that stuff. You need to be the source of the solution here. And I think President Trump, for all my problems with the guy, hit the nail on the head when he called them losers. I mean, his statement was basically, they're losers and sissies and they're going to hell. And I think that was pitch perfect.
Absolutely. Just one thing I want to add, Scott, you can't improve on what Scott just said, but to me, I saw one video from the actual event, and the thing that was most disturbing to me was the video was taken down on the floor just in front of the stage, and the explosion happened up in the foyer by the ticket counter, I think. And so you see all these young girls just milling around, and you hear this boom. And at first people thought, oh, what happened? Did maybe, did a light fall down or something? And you can hear screaming in the distance, and then you could hear the screaming come at you like a wave. You could literally feel it like or see it like a shock wave off of an explosion. It just came down, and as more and more people began to realize what happened, then more and more people started to panic. So, I don't know when we're going to stop this. I don't. If bringing down the World Trade Center didn't wake us up to what we're facing, then I just simply don't know what it's going to take. An A-bomb maybe in Times Square, maybe that'll get their attention. If they lose their lives and their children's lives, maybe then we'll start to get some attention on this.
Well, of course I hope it doesn't come to that.
Me too.
When I awoke to the news this morning at Dark 30, one of the first places my mind wandered to was a Robert Heinlein quote that he attributed to Lazarus Long, one of his great characters. And I'll read you just a short version of it. He said, "All societies are based on rules to protect pregnant women and young children. All else is surplus, adornment, luxury, or folly which can and must be dumped in an emergency to preserve this prime function. Attempts to formulate a perfect society on any foundation other than women and children first is not only witless, it is automatically genocidal." And to that, I would just add that it is time for we men of the West to decide what kind of a civilization we're going to have. And that's your right angle on the Manchester attack. Thanks for watching. This has been made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. If you like what you see, click on over and consider joining yourself. We'd sure like to have you here.